Hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you. I'm recovering from laryngitis. So I can't do anything other than this tone of voice or else I'm going to lose my voice. So just please know that I'm unable to fully express myself. If I lose my voice or if I start coughing, I'll leave the room and Mayor Pro Tem will kindly take over for me. So first of all, I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Thank everybody online for zooming in. This meeting is going to be recorded. It's being recorded for folks who can't join us tonight, or if you want to watch it again later, you know, in the bathtub or whatever. So I'm Mayor Holly Rogan, those of you I haven't met. And so just a couple of things I want to say before we really get going. The first thing I want to say is that I realize now that we should have proactively solicited public input. We hear you loud and clear. We heard you, we're still listening. This is the second step in listening, so there's more to come. And as I mentioned in a Facebook post, I do believe that we need to slow this process down. So that takes action of the entire board at a board meeting. That discussion will happen on March 18th, which is our next regular board meeting. That agenda hasn't been published yet, but what I want you to know is that there is no resolution to approve the IGA on that agenda. There is an item for discussion direction to staff. And then what I've been noodling around with and what I also talked about today online is that I think we need to create a working group. And I think that working group needs to include citizens, board members, PCBC members, and staff. How that looks, what the composition looks like and all that, that's to come. That's also going to be something that the full board needs to agree on. And that's also something I think we should put in place after the election. So tonight we're joined over there by County Commissioner Marco Lochiman. We've got Dale Case, Director of Planning, Kimberly Sanchez, the Deputy Director of Planning and Zoning for Boulder County. So welcome, thank you. And we also have the Lions Fire Protection District over there, making sure that we have means of egress. We need them. And the Planning and Community Development Commission over here. So what I would like to do is, in a little change to the agenda that you might have seen, I want to have Andrew, where are you? Okay. Oh, thank you. Andrew, our planner, do just a real brief introduction to the IGA for people who weren't here last week and didn't see it, who are maybe watching online. So we're going to do that. Then Lions Fire Protection District is going to talk a little bit about the criteria they use when they're considering an annexation for approval. And then we're going to get on to community comment and potential solutions. I thought I was going to have 2 microphones. I do not have 2 microphones, and because I can't talk so loud, I'm going to keep this one. And I'm going to lift my new acquaintance Douglas over there to kind of help. What we're really hoping when we hear from folks is that people who live in town but who didn't maybe get a chance to speak last week have a chance to speak first so that we can make sure that we're hearing everybody. So I want to see if Commissioner Lochiman wants to say anything. And thank you so much for being here for 2 weeks in a row, Boulder County staff.
Buenas noches. My name is Marco Lochiman. I'm one of the county commissioners. Just really want to say 2 things. One, Boulder County is here with our community and permitting planning group director and deputy director, and myself to be here and listen and to participate in this process. And just want to share with folks in the room that the intergovernmental agreement is a process that we go through and support communities all around the county. Some of you may be aware that we just finished and had the city council in Longmont approved their intergovernmental agreement extension just in the last 3 weeks. So just want to make sure folks know that this is a process that staff for all our towns and cities go through with the Boulder County staff at different times with different terms, and are listening to community needs and working with your each of the town and city staff. So we just are here to support, and we're going to continue that work. Also, we have the next one up is going to be, that's in conversation, is Netherlands, and we also have a super IGA. So just want to make sure people know that this is a process. Boulder County as an organization will continue to be addressing our open space, our growth boundaries, our wildlife habitat, and all those good pieces. And we also recognize that our colleagues and other elected officials are looking at the planning areas and are elected by all of you to make decisions in regards to what each community, city, town wants to do in regards to development in housing affordability with our regional housing partnership, with leveraging state funds, and all of those different pieces. It looks different, and we understand that. So I just want to also acknowledge staff, elected officials in the room. We sign up to work 24/7 and be on call at all times for all things, but staff does not. And so I just want to always recognize staff who is here after hours and will be here for a while this evening, because we can't do this work without you, and certainly the volunteers on all the planning commissions around Boulder County who are also looking at our land use policy. So just want to appreciate you all welcoming us into this space this morning.
Thank you so much. And so before we turn over to Andrew, I want to see if any other trustees would like to speak. Not at this point. Okay, reserving the right. All right, Andrew, would you like the microphone, Andrew?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
All right, so we've Andrew Bowen, planning staff. So we've kind of gone over this a few times, but just as a reiteration, and for anybody new to this process, an IGA is really a document, and we call it a negotiation between the county and the town, but it really is a partnership to kind of outline, what properties within the town's 3-mile plan can be annexed in the future. And I don't want to throw out any words that. So a 3-mile plan, draw a point around our entire jurisdiction and just add a 3-mile buffer to that. And that's our 3-mile plan. And historically, every town in Colorado has a 3-mile plan, and they are able, if they meet, different standards, they can annex within that area. So the purpose of the Boulder County and Town of Lyons IGA is to both, again, allow the town to grow a little bit, but then also to maintain open space, the county's open space around, the county and around the town as well. So it's this balance of development and keeping Boulder County and Lyons is beautiful. It's the reason why we all live and work here. So kind of in a nutshell, what has occurred, we've talked about these properties, but I'll go over them again. We have the Boone property, Carpenter property, the Connor property, and the Lucanum property, and the Hawkins property. There's also a little one here called the Harkless property, but the three of concern are certainly, because they're in more established neighborhoods, are the Boone, the Carpenter, and the Connor. And we completely understand kind of that, and that's why we're here working through that. So you'll see, and I just want to make this clear as well, just what all these colors mean. So everything in green is still within this current proposal, is still within the rural preservation. So, it's not up for development at this time. Everything in yellow is currently could be annexed and developed. And I just want to go through that process because it does seem like I didn't explain very well. So just because a property is able to be annexed, it's not straight to development. There's a long line of entitlement that has to go. So you annex the property, and then you establish zoning on that property, and then you submit, subdivision plan, which would have your fire mitigation, your utilities, how you can provide water and sewer, all of that gets packaged into that development subdivision plan. And then you go in and you come in and you develop. And each one of those steps takes Board of Trustees approval. So it really is a process that has some checks and balance and goes through multiple tiers of approvals. So the other important kind of colors to note, everything in red hatching is non-developable zone. So be able to bring these parcels into our planning area and to have them where they could be developed. We established a development and non-development areas. So this is to ensure that, you know, if I don't like using certain properties as examples, but if the Boone property were to be example, the vast majority of that property would not be developable. And that was, again, to balance out development with, you know, fire mitigation and just view sheds, wildlife corridors and habitat. So that's kind of the IGA in a nutshell. And then, you know, especially down along the eastern corridor, this is where we're trying to balance out, you know, your higher density uses, because within the comp plan, those were all vetted and proposed to be mixed use or planned neighborhood districts. So that allows for 16 units per acre. And we went over this last meeting. Again, when we were going through, and this is done all over the country, but understandably, it is not done in lines. So I want to make that clear that the density reallocation, while it is a common practice amongst a lot of mountain communities and corridors, you know, so using your one parcel or 1 unit per acre for the entire parcel, and then allowing that density to be placed or clustered somewhere where it's going to have the least effect. That was the general approach. But as has been discussed last week and the week before, that's really, it seems to be a point where we as a community need to come together and figure out what those densities look like, or how those densities could work. So I think that's a pretty good summary, but if there's anything else.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, so I am, and y'all can ask questions of us and staff, you know, when after the fire district talks about their role in the annexation process, we're going to open it up to questions and comments. So, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mayor. Once we go through a process like this, we follow the town's lead in terms of what they think they want to do or what the developers may want to do. But the two things that we look at first and foremost are access and water. But until we see plans of density factors and mitigation issues, all that stuff is right now, we can't comment on it. And so until we see actual plans, the two things that we would talk about right now initially would be water and access. And once we see the plans and whether or not they can meet that in their development criteria, we go from there. But again, until we see plans, it's very difficult to say, well, if you do this, you do that, and we would be remiss in making comments like that until we have actually anything on the drawing board. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And just for the sake of clarity, we cannot approve an annexation unless the fire district gives the okay. That would never happen. Okay, so that's briefly. Thank you all. And so folks who didn't get a chance to speak last week and who live in town, if you maybe raise a hand.
We're here last week.
We're not here last week, would like to speak. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay, Eric Danik, I'm at 214 Stickney. And I'm here because I'm hearing rumors that Stickney is going to be, become a 2-lane road. And there's going to be a road up the backside, to the top of Long's Peak Drive, possibly a secondary access to the Connor subdivision. I'm concerned about access to the Connor subdivision disrupting our neighborhood. I need to know what the town's designs on Stickney and Seward are so that I can decide whether I'm gonna put some money and work into our house or just take, take the money and leave?
That's a fair question, and if I could answer it for you, I will say there are no designs to do that. This is, what we're talking about here is nothing nearly that granular. What we're talking about here is what we want potential future growth to look like. So, could that happen in the future? If we have an IGA that says we have the ability to annex the Cutter parcel if they apply, yeah. But
So the common parcel has not been applied for yet, or?
not even, unless staff knows something different.
No applications have been submitted. And just to reiterate, because I have heard questions about where this road is gonna be and how access is gonna be here and where this sewer line is gonna be. You know, this IGA is blue sky level. And while it's important for a community for us to really dig down at this level, you know, these property owners have general interest, but some of them, just as many don't have interest. So again, this is just what potential there could be, you know, 5-10 years down the road. So questions about, you know, expansion or widening of lanes, you know, those types of conversations just, they have not occurred during this process.
Does that make sense, Eric?
Yeah, I'm not totally, satisfied. I'm still pretty up in the air, but I guess, yeah, well, I guess there'd be another planning process years from now, so be part of that. So, okay.
And then I saw a hand back there. Larry?
Yeah, Larry Elmore, I live on Steamboat Valley. I'm a little confused by the process that you described. Annexation, then development, then approval. Why would any of these landowners annex to the town and open themselves up to town regulation without the security of knowing that their project might have, you know, through the design process, I mean, they can't look at fire, we can't look at water, we can't look at electrical. Why would they even do that?
That's a really great question. I'm really glad you asked it, and Andrew will correct me if I'm mistaken. So when an owner applies for annexation, they have to bring in the application a development plan. And they would bring a fire analysis, right? So they bring everything all at once, because you're absolutely right. They don't want to go through a long, expensive process just to have it not work out. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the annexation creates an entitlement to fall under the town zoning code, which would allow a higher density and also connection to town services.
Could you say that again a little bit louder, would you mind?
Yeah, so the annexation would be used as a tool to create the entitlement to the town's zoning code. So it would be able to have more flexibility in your housing options and your development options under the town's code.
So is the zoning established during the annexation process?
Yeah, so the zoning, generally they run concurrently, but you have the annexation hearing when the annexation is approved, but then you establish zoning. Most communities establish zoning that night. So you're not going to annex a property without establishing your base zoning on that lot, that second. They're just two, not to get too far in the weeds, they're just two legislative processes. So it has to annex first, because you can't zone a property that isn't in the town. So you just have to annex it and then establish that zoning, but it would likely be the same.
Go ahead, Mimi.
Just a simple question. Why are we even having this discussion when NIST has listed this area that's north of Steamboat Valley as one of the most dangerous wildfire zones in the United States, more so than Lahaina, more so than Marshall, more so, I mean, you name everything in California paradise. it's more by several degrees more dangerous than any of those for the potential of wildfire. Why would we be even considering putting people in harm's way in an area that is one of the most dangerous fire areas in the United States?
Well, I think that's a great question too, and I thank you very much for asking it. My understanding is that, and I do not have a deep understanding of this at all. So I just want to say that, but my understanding is that where it is developable may not be as much of a risk. And that where the no development area is could actually be used to help with fire mitigation. But I would leave it up to the professionals to talk about that.
Thanks, Mayor. And I apologize. I'm remiss. I should introduce myself and our fire chief, Rob Stump. My name is Steve Pitchke and I'm the assistant fire chief and the fire marshal. To answer your question, we currently have a community wildfire protection plan, CWPP. That was established in 2011. We are in the process right now of updating that. So until we get that update, and there will be in the next year or so, I can't verify that your comments with regard to its most dangerous place in the United States. That CWPP will actually designate that area and we'll be able to, then we will go from there. What kind of mitigation might be needed? What kind of density would be allowed or not allowed? All those kinds of things will come into consideration. But until you have that plan and it's updated, once again, I would be remiss in saying, yeah, you're right, that's the most dangerous place in Boulder County. So let us get through that process and then we can verify or not.
Well, that's missed information.
Pardon me?
That was science investigation by NIST.
Again, totally different entity and totally different plan of what we actually are looking at here in our community.
Can you
That's
point
what we
out
have that
on the
plan.
map, can you point out on the map where you're talking about, what area you're talking about?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
You point out this area now, right up there.
And on page 182 of our comprehensive.
If you don't mind just holding Cheryl a little bit, I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Brian.
I was here last week, but I didn't speak. I wanted to leave things with everybody else. Run down now 395 Vasquez Court. I do appreciate the fact that we're talking about the density issues and the fire concerns. And I'm also wanting to express concerns about water. I've lived here for 25 years and I live on Vasquez Court. And within the last year, it's gotten to where I turn on my water and it stops running. And I can't feel comfortable that we have fire mitigation for the homes that exist today when I encounter those situations. I was on the board and I would go to be in the shower before board meetings and my water would stop. And then things were good for a while. Now I just, it's been 25 years of this. So I'm very nervous about any development anywhere. That said, I appreciate the fact that people, the DOT seems to be hearing this. I know, Holly, you have addressed this in terms of you are listening. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. This is our way of life. And I look forward to taking time and talking about this. And from having been on the board for 6 years, if there's anything worth doing, it will survive till the next term and we get buy-in from everyone and we'll all be happy and we'll have a better community. And thank you for your steps in that direction.
Thank you so much, Brian. I didn't even pay him to say that either. I see it has out there, but I can't even talk to it. Thank you.
My name is Captain Cheryl. I live at 330 Blackwood Street. There is an ordinance on the books
the non-Lions, and it's the 5-acre rule. And it, states, I don't have it all right, but, basically, if an area of 5 acres or more is to be annexed, it needs to go to a vote. So I am curious as to how the adoption of whatever those lines are that are leaving on there may, intersect or potentially circumvent that, law.
I'm really glad you asked that question because we've been hearing a lot of concern about that, so I appreciate the opportunity to address it. As far as I know, and I am no map making professional, some of the developable parcels on this map are over 5 acres and some are under 5 acres. So that's, you know, if they are over 5 acres, yes, they will go to a vote. And I think, Andrew, can you, I know we talked about this and I know you don't know the exact areas either, but I think it was the Connor parcel that was over 5 acres of developable when.
Yeah, I can't say, again, but how at least the non-developable versus developable areas were made. We followed topo lines, we followed lines of existing vegetation. We tried to tried to pull development as far down the mountain as possible. You know, I know Carpenter, that is over 5 acres. Boone might be under, Connor might be over, just eyeballing. We can certainly get those dimensions.
So I really wasn't even asking that specifically.
Sure.
But there are parcels that are developable, that are less than 5 acres, and they're brought into this IGA, that development would be able to move forward without a problem.
So if they come straight, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Excuse me?
So the question was, if you don't mind, and please correct me if I don't get it right. The question was, if a parcel is brought in and it's under 5 acres, does it go to a vote? Was that the question? Yeah. Right. It does not, because the ordinance is for parcels that are 5 acres and over.
So, and just to clarify a bit, if they come straight to the town for annexation, any of these properties would go through that vote. They're all above 5 acres, they come straight through. What is available, because we are marking development versus non-development zones, what is available is to go through the county subdivision exemption process. And in that process, you would establish what we're seeing right here. You'd have one parcel that was dedicated in a conservation easement that was going to stay that way and seamlessly in perpetuity. And then you'd have another secondary parcel off of that parent parcel that would be able to be developed. So the outcomes are going to be exactly the same, whether you come through the town and you go through the vote or you go through the county's subdivision. The division of land, the developable versus non-developable, just because as staff, you know, I'll go out on a limb, I think it's a great idea, whether the densities are appropriate or not. The fact that we can limit housing or whatever development from being up on the bank sides, I think that's an asset to most of it. So go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to see if Boulder County planning staff has anything they'd like to add.
So, can add a little bit to it, Andrew got it right, and if it did come through the county process and a subdivision exemption, there'd be a parcel that would be created that would be the annexable piece that would have development rights still attached to it. The other part that would remain in the county, if it remained in the county, we would say it's not developable area. And either we could protect that by keeping it in the county, or through that subdivision exemption process, putting a conservation easement on that portion of the parcel so that if it got annexed into this town, it still would not be a developable portion of that property. It allows for sort of that buffer area between the other areas of town. It allows for some possible mitigation, wildfire mitigation on parcels where you have some of that land reserved for non-developable areas, things like that. So there is that opportunity to do that.
Did that answer your question?
So if there's a parcel, let's say it was whatever the current parcel, and it was 5 acres,
but it was deemed that only 3 acres were developable. So it gets annexed at 5, but if only 3 is developable, then it's okay to develop it, it doesn't.
No, it still would go to, it still would go to a vote. It still would go to a vote. It's the total area of the parcel. So we'll go over it. And, Douglas, if you could help me, if I need it, please do.
So I saw a document, which mentioned that, for the boom plot, which is, it said it was, 5 acres, it said that there was gonna be, 30 units developed on that. And, that seems like a lot. I mean, I think what was being proposed was single family detached housing. And so I was trying to reconcile how you fit 30 single family detached homes on a 5 acre plot.
Yeah, so that's one possibility. That's something that has not been proposed by, as far as I know. But I'm gonna let Andrew answer that.
Yeah, and again, I think this this piece about density, I think that's why we're here to try to figure out, where there's give and take and where there's balance. So just want to make it clear, the units are not separate structures. In our comp plan, it does say that there's a goal to diversify different housing types, different tenures, which is rental versus owning your home. So, there are models all over the Mountain West and even probably in Boulder County of duplexes that from the street, or even triplexes that from the street look just like a single family home. You would never tell the difference besides the number of families that live there. So it's not 30 separate structures. That wasn't ever the intent. It's how to break that up into more diverse housing types than just your classic single family.
Okay, just want to make sure, did you speak last week or? Okay, go ahead.
I'm confused because I thought nothing was proposed yet. When you're talking about the number of houses on that particular property, I'm confused about that. I thought there was nothing set yet.
Yeah, so the IGA specifies a proposed density, and again, that's draft right now. It's not set in concrete.
So for all those properties?
For each property within the IGA has a proposed density and a proposed housing split of affordable, attainable, and market rate housing.
And one other thing, so last week we talked about the citizens vote on a proposal if it's 5 acres. And then we talked about how that could change to be 4 acres or less somehow. And you're not talking about that today. So
I think, well, no, I think Dale touched on it. And that's the subdivision process that could occur in the county.
yeah,
If a property owner decided they wanted to apply for a subdivision exemption, I want to make sure I'm getting the term right. If a property owner decided they wanted to do that, they can apply in the county for a subdivision
under
exemption.
5 acres.
They could, yep.
And then we would not be able to vote on that as a
If
town?
it's, the way the ordinance is written right now, that's correct.
So is it our ordinance or Boulder County's ordinance?
It's the 5 acre ordinance is our ordinance. It's an ordinance that the voters passed, and I'll look to former Mayor Angela to tell me what year that was, because I know you know this.
Between 20 and 22 years ago.
Yeah, and even if it weren't to be voted upon, that annexation would still have to be approved by the Board of Trustees. So it's not a use by right, but still, that's just kind of the chain.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hey, my name's Dave Chilson. I'm at 731 Second Avenue. Yeah, this is my first meeting. I just learned about all of this, and I've been here a long time, and development has been at a pace, a fairly slow pace. So my concern is there's an assumption of accelerated development. I don't understand where that comes from and why that's happening. That's a concern that could be addressed if anyone has something about that. But to your point, is there any mood among the board to change code? We do it every year, change code so that we can vote on these things instead of I think, speaking on behalf of other people, feeling like we have to petition other people to vote the way we want them to, rather than letting us vote, taking the 5 acres and move it down to 0.
Well, if I know this correctly, that would take a referendum.
Wonderful, I love her.
And there is a process in the code. It's a text amendment. So, really anyone in this room, anybody in this community, they can apply and they can go through the text amendment process. And that's, that would be the most formalized. I think it's Article 15, if you want to go study your code tonight, if you want to go to sleep. But I do believe it's Article 15, and it outlines both your map amendment and your text amendment process. And that's a process that all towns have, probably all counties have as well. And it's just where there's code language that needs to be changed, an applicant or the planning commission or the board of trustees can initiate a change to that code amendment.
That's good information. Thank you very much. Does anyone have anything to offer as far as this feeling I have that there's accelerated development as the assumption? And I don't understand why that's happening compared to 5 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
I'm not sure 100% that I know 100% what you mean by accelerated, so could you say more about that?
I would probably refer to, I haven't talked to Nick about this, but somebody who knows more than I do. How many new houses were built from 2000 to 2010 per year on average, estimated off the bat? I haven't talked to him. What would you say?
So this is a really good question, and I think getting a really accurate answer would probably take some research in terms of planning and permitting to see what the answer to that is.
We could certainly pull those numbers.
Without reference to specific numbers, because I know a lot of realtors. I have a house related business. I know all the realtors, and it's far less than what we're seeing the numbers now, far less. So just in general terms, is there an assumption of accelerated development for some reason? For example, people who own larger parcels wanting to subdivide and move out and cash out, and developers looking at Lyons as a very profitable place.
Well, that's a really great question, and it's also kind of a larger question too. So you're right. People love Lyons. We all love Lyons. This is why we're sitting here again, right? And talking about this again. And as I know everybody knows, there's also a housing crisis, right? And so it's, I don't know if it's accelerated is really the right word, because to me, it actually seems a little bit slow. And by that, I mean, I am not hearing about or seeing a lot of new housing units being built, with the exception of Lyons Valley Townhomes and the redevelopment at 317 Evan. We have very few lots left for development, as trustees and former trustees will tell you. So what I'm feeling is some intense pressure to build more housing for people. And what I personally believe is that people should have homes that are safe and that they can afford, and so they can, stay members of our community. But as far as accelerated, I'm not sure that's what I'm seeing, but I'll be interested to know what kind of numbers staff can pull out for that.
And there was,
There's one back.
I see you, but I want to get folks who haven't talked yet. Yeah, go ahead.
I was sorry.
We'll come back.
Sorry, I was trying to look for the initial comprehensive plan. I thought it said on there that the county cannot have conservation easements on the property that's in the potential annexation area.
Yeah, so as part of that process, that this residual lot or the lot left behind, it would not come into the county. So the county, it's still within the county's jurisdiction.
But I thought because of the IGA, the county is not allowed to have land that's within the potential annexation area, get a conservation easement on there.
So under the current IGA, we can't go purchase open space or rent the area.
But what if the
Or
owner
partial
wants to?
conservation easements without the town board's approval. So it has to be jointly approved in the planning area. In the rural preservation area, those areas that are green, for an IGA, the county can go in and purchase open space. That's sort of the gist of the agreement. Is the county's not gonna go in and purchase areas that may be suitable for development of the town without the town saying, okay, yeah, we don't want to have funds to develop this. Go ahead and use that. That's what the town, one of the big things the town gets out of that. Town may want to develop.
I only have a four, I have one other responsibility on me. That goes myself, and I'm incorporated so the county is not able to vote on this 5 acre rule, and it affects us. And that's unfortunate. We also don't get a vote for our board of trustees. Yeah, so I want to make that point. That's my things.
I appreciate that, thank you. And I appreciate that people, really, who may not live within town limits really want to have a say. And, what I'd like to say about that is, yes, it's true that in order to vote on town issues, you need to live within the town limits. However, I know that this board and I consider our community to be wider than the town limits. Thank you. You in the back, I know, thank you. Sorry about that.
Cindy Fisher, I live in Stone Canyon, and the last thing you said last time was the only thing people care about is the north, and it's not true. And the thing I want to understand is how I can look at the IGA map and your planning map and your definitions about low, medium, and high density, and know which is true, as in accurate. Because they do not, for the piece of property I most care about, say the same thing. So could you please tell me who trumps who?
If I may, which property are you?
Okay, so I live in Stone Canyon on the west side, and I love the IGA for myself personally on the west side because it's called rural preservation. Then when I look at your map for the Thrive plan, it is rural neighborhood. And then when I look at the definition of that, it can be as much as medium density housing.
Sure.
Those three things do not align.
Yeah, so again, as I said, when I opened up, that was, and that's why we're here, is because obviously those densities and that interpretation. So we'll take the Boone property, and I went over
Let's
this.
take the one I care about, because I can understand
Well, I'm
that.
sorry, I don't know which one that was.
Okay, it is,
Oh, Hawkins?
well, it's on the other side, Hawkins, but then if you go over, it doesn't have a name. It is a green corridor that's in Boulder County right now. And well, you guys were gonna put, affordable housing like 10 or 12 years ago. It was one of the sites, so maybe that'll prompt your mind.
Sure. Yeah, so, and I'll have to go back. I believe the Hawkins was intended to be mixed use development.
Would you be able to come up and point to it on the map, maybe? That might help.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm concerned about Hawkins. It's just not in my backyard. So this piece of property right here, I love it. On this, it's rural planning. And if I only cared about me, I'd say, let's do it, baby. But when you look at this map that you guys made, now it is rural neighborhoods. And then when you look at the definition of rural neighborhoods, as that wonderful woman read out last time, it's from low, medium density, which is up to 16 per acre. Those do not go together. That is rural preservation, where the animals can roam. That is rural neighborhoods. And then your definition of rural neighborhoods is up to 16 units per acre.
Okay, so, yeah, so this lot,
Right there.
this isn't in our planning area, so there's no development.
No, but it was when you guys did your planning, comprehensive plan.
Okay, yeah, so this is, again, the comp plan was vetted through the community and. was
No,
adopted.
I was saying nobody cared.
So, but again,
Fine.
tonight, I guess the good news is this.
That's what I said.
Shows a
If
downside.
I care about me, I would love this, as long as the other things don't trump it. But what I want to know, the reason I keep coming, is I want to know which trumps which. Because there are three attitudes about this one piece of property. And I'm guessing if that piece of property has this problem, the map has this problem.
So again, this property here is not developable at this moment. It cannot be annexed into the town.
And yet your comprehensive plan wants to develop it.
Sure. So as far as governance, whenever the board of trustees makes any determination of if developable, a project development is okay, it has to clarify that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. So the IGA draws the map of what lots can come in, but where the rubber meets the road, again, is within the comprehensive plan. But the property that you're worried about right now is not in our annexable area anyway.
So can I, if I could, I think these are great questions to ask. And I think that likely there's some work to do on all of this, but I want to clarify for a second the purpose of the comprehensive plan, which is it's made to encompass what our community in general would like to see over the next 10 years. It's not meant to be so specific. It's not the planning document. It's meant to contain the ideas that the community wants to see. And if by the virtue of this process that we're going through now, these conversations that we're having now, if that means that, hey, you know what? We're hearing now that we need to take another look at that comp plan. You know, we did a whole lot of outreach for 2 years, but maybe we need to go back. Maybe we need to listen to more people. Maybe we need to do different kinds of outreach. And so the comprehensive plan is a living document. It's a living document, and it is not the end all be all of what is going to happen or even necessarily what should happen. That's the reason that it's a living document and it's revisited.
Okay, so I'm still not sure I understand. Like, if you were gonna say one document, you know, if there are three conflicting things, which one is the one that overrides?
That's a good question, and I honestly don't know the answer to it, but it's something we clearly need to figure out.
I think you could create a lot of problems going away or magnifying, depending on what that answer is.
Well, I think we could probably solve a lot. And so I think it's absolutely worth looking at.
And as far as the comprehensive plan goes, I tried to have the input and that thing didn't look anything like what I would like to say. And I'm guessing I'm not the only one that's the crowd. Thank you for letting me.
Commissioner, did you want to add something?
Yeah, all we wanted to clarify here in the table in the back from Boulder County is that the IGA, what's in the IGA is what I heard the question is what supersedes the IGA if it's within the IGA. If the parcel outside of that, then it's not. Yeah, if that's helpful.
Yeah, this might be a good time. I think we submitted a slide that we want to present because last week we were asked, well, what solution would you have for your concerns? And I don't know if that's something that's available now.
Yeah, well, we have it, and I definitely want to show them. Look at that. Okay, let's give just a few more minutes for people who have not yet spoken who would like to speak. Kelly?
Last week I spoke to, more of the concrete, of the, how the rural neighborhood, how, well, I don't know what I'm saying right now is gonna be all that helpful, but, I spoke more concretely to what she was talking about, the rural neighborhood and how it's defined and how it's just very inconsistent with what's put on the IGA. And although I want to stay more concrete, I feel compelled to speak more to the feeling because that's really strong. And it's only been growing since last fall when we first started to sit down with town staff. And I'm a fan of metaphors. It's how I just interpret more complex parts of life into something more simple and graspable. And I have a statement and followed by a question. And the feeling for me with all of this is like in college, having a boyfriend, I grab his phone, pick it up and see there's a text message to another woman that says, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. And I approach him and I say, what the heck? And his response is, I didn't do it. You know, I have this proposition of something that is just on my map of things that could happen tomorrow. But I don't yet. And this is what it feels like to me right now. It's like, we're trying to ask these direct questions and get these direct answers. And yes, tomorrow hasn't happened. You know, the developer, well, some are present, some aren't. Some property owners are interested in the annexation process, some aren't. But I think a lot of us, and you know, I look to so many people who, this is what they have worked their entire life for, is their property, their home. Trying to figure out, do I invest more or do I dump it, take what I can and leave so I can find somewhere that represents what I thought my town represented. And so my question, to get more to the point of, I feel like what some of the questions were last week, and I heard you asking tonight about the 5-acre rule. From the February 12th video that many of us saw that provoked a lot of the, is it 100% true that there is no intentionality behind the developable parcel that would be carved out being under 5 acres? Is there a sliver of conversation? And granted, it's an executive session, so I don't know the legality behind what we are and aren't allowed to know. But I think a lot of us are asking because we want to know, is it 100% true that there is zero connection to, if the Boone parcel, for example, is under 5 acres, it's developable, that has nothing to do with that being able to slide past a vote of the people?
It's 4.83 and 4.89 are real close.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it was the email from the previous planner, not Andrew, suggesting, can we draft this 5-acre rule so we don't have to deal with the people of town?
That was the previous.
Yep.
I understand that, but this negotiation between Town Alliance and Boulder County didn't just start since Andrew stepped in.
No, it did not. And what I can tell you is that in our discussions with Boulder County, in our meetings with Boulder County staff actually asked us at one point, are you trying to subvert this rule? And the answer is absolutely not. That was, I can speak for myself. Absolutely not. And I don't know if any other trustees or planning commission members would like to address the issue, but I can speak for myself.
I think that's kind of the core of what many people are asking about the 5-acre rule.
Yeah, and listen, I feel the lack of trust. I feel it. And so I want to name that, because honestly, I have been in your shoes. This is what we were talking about earlier. I don't know if you all know, but I used to be on the board of Plan Boulder County, which was founded in the 50s to create open space, which is the most conservative land use organization in the county and maybe even the state, right? I spent years fighting developers and fighting development to help my community. So this is so different for me to be on this side of the table and say, no, I think I understand. I'm trying really, really hard to make sure that I understand. And what I would like to do is help rebuild that trust. And so I think the proposals that I outlined earlier of slowing this down, right? Not rushing anything through, creating a working group that is composed of multiple constituencies so that we can have conversations about this and find solutions that work for everybody. What I'm hoping is that will start the process of regaining that trust.
Next question, 1, 2, and then we have.
Yeah, let's, trustee Eddie would like to respond to that. Thank you very much.
I would just like to say, if you're on the board of trustees, that 5-acre rule is actually kind of a godsend. Because it takes it off your plate. All of a sudden, the responsibility of the annexation doesn't belong to you. It just belongs to the will of the people. And they don't pay us enough to have that kind of stress on top of us. And there's a nuance to this. When you're on the board, your vote is public for the rest of all eternity. And I know there's a lot of people that oppose Steamboat Valley Road, but 7 people voted for it. They own it. The best thing about a vote of the people.
Is the microphone working?
Oh, I don't want to speak closer. I'm sorry. The best thing about the board of the best thing about the vote of the people is we still get a vote just like you, and nobody knows how you voted. So when you go to the town park that next week, no one gives you the stink eye, and you don't have to tell anybody how you voted. That's the problem with and I'm just gonna repeat myself, but being on the board isn't fun at times. And it's really, really nice to have the monkey off your back. So no, we're not all that excited about having to face a vote for an annexation on 4.83 acres. Nobody here is looking forward to that night. So that's all I have to say.
At 0.17.
Thank you.
I just have a comment that I can make real brief, because this woman said it very clear. There's kind of an undertone of some collusion or collusion going on that led to developable parcels that are less than 5 acres. I don't need to talk about any of that.
Well, I really appreciate you naming that. I really, really do. And Kelly, I appreciate you bringing this topic up, because I think you're right. It's been the elephant in the room,
My question is, like I said, I don't quite understand who determines that hashed out red area, what's not developable, and what are the criteria?
So that was staff, that was our staff, working in collaboration with Boulder County staff. And as Andrew said, it was based on a number of factors, including geography and everything else that you said. I mean, I'm not a planner, thank goodness.
Yeah, and the IGA is specific of what developable versus non-developable is, and then it further breaks down a few parcels to break that out as well.
I think the question, I just want to make sure that we get this answered. So when you work with Boulder County staff to look at what exactly is in the red hash mark that's not developable, what were the criteria that you used?
Oh, yeah, so again, even in the 2012 IGA, we had developable versus non-developable areas. This was an expansion on that. Again, if we're pulling parcels in close to our town and that have, slope, we want to make sure that the vast majority of that property and where it's on slope and where there's existing drainage or existing vegetation, those areas are preserved. So that's why, you'll see, especially down here, on the Lucanen parcel, this is a great example of, it's strictly topography. We've got a wildlife corridor that we're trying to protect, and we've adjusted that a few times, getting further and further out. This little area A, that's where the slope drops. So it truly is, that 2 acres, it's there because there's only 2 acres there.
So I want to do 2 more questions, and then I want to get to that slide.
So you have Brett over here and then the gentleman.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just have a comment and then a question. So the comment is maybe directed to the individual that was asking, like, where was this coming from? And so the Lions Housing Future Plan has a chart about basically how the forecast population and then also forecasted households, and then that comes up with a number of units, 342 units. That number of units has been kind of held up here as like the goal that the town should aspire to. The analysis for getting that number is very elementary, and it's not at all good. So what they did is they looked back 4 decades, from 1980 to 2020, and looked at the population growth. During that time, there was no limits or very little limits on the geographic distribution of where people could grow. Now we're kind of built out, we're geographically limited. But what they've done is they've taken a trend line and kept that going without regard to where you stop building. And so that's very much a concern. Then once you have that population growth, you divide it by the number of people per household. So in their analysis, it was 2.46 to get the number of units. So that number has been the goal of the individual or the, PCDC, during the meeting that they were discussing, like that was kind of like, we're aiming for 342 units. I think we need to go back and ask ourselves as a community, is that the number we want? That's my question.
I really appreciate you saying that, and I also want to let people know that, and we talked about this a little bit last time too. As part of signing up for Proposition 123, what we've committed to as a town is 9 housing units over the next 3 years. That's it.
But I read it was 10 units, but annualized for 3 per year.
Yeah, it's 10 units first for you.
Yeah. So the question though that I have relates to the PCDC meeting that was on February 12th. In that meeting, you're kind of laying out this plan of, okay, here I've got all these properties that we can pull into the IGA. And the way we're going to do this is have some undeveloped land with red hash marks, followed by a small portion that is developable. And we're going to cram a whole bunch of units onto that land, 30 units. You're going to tally up all the numbers, you're going to get to 342, or it was actually, I think, 4 at that point. Then there was a little bit of concern on the PCDC about like, well, is that really what we want to do? There's going to be like in the future, we don't know how much land we want. And then all of a sudden you started to change the answer to be, well, yeah, the red hash mark is not in perpetuity, it's not forever. We can actually change that later. So I want to understand, is it in perpetuity forever, or is it, this is a response to Commissioner Schwartz, I believe, who had the question, like, I'm a little concerned about this, and that's when you responded to her saying, like, I think, no, it's okay, we can actually change that in
No, the area hash in red, if it were, whether it comes into the town as developable versus non-developable land, if it had an easement over top of it, or if it stays in the county, through the IGA, that piece is to be preserved in the county. Or it can come into the town with, again, some easement or some assurance that has to be preserved. The spreadsheet, I believe that you're mentioning, I myself, because I've only been here for just under 2 months, had some reservations towards those numbers and calculations. I was just trying to see, where that balance could be urban redevelopment and infill and utilizing, annexable space. So that was that exercise. Again, I think there's no, that's why we're here. So it's always, most planners, and most planners will tell you this, where we need to develop, and if we can have density, it's going to be close to town services, close to, built up streets. But there is also a balance because Lyons is small. And right now, I think if you go, and there's maybe 4 to 5 developable properties right now. And they're all in that subdivision. My apologies, I'm still new. But there's just not a lot of room to grow. So again, it's just strike this balance between what we can do and where we can densify responsibly in town, and then where on the exterior can we pick up some areas.
And I think trustee, I think.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment in regards to why does this all happen so quickly now? It's actually, the 3 events happened simultaneously, all by just complete coincidence. We had to do the housing study because of some Colorado grant. The IGA expired 2 years ago. It was supposed to last 10 years. We asked for another year or something extension. And then 2 properties are changing hands legally. And those 2 properties came and requested an annexation. The thing is though, we can go 15 years without one landowner requesting annexation and nothing's going to happen and the town can't do anything about it. Nobody can force anybody to annex. It's because these 3 things all happened within 2 months of each other. And who would have thought? Did I have that all right?
Almost.
Yeah.
There have been no annexation applications.
Well,
as far as I know.
just
Yeah, conversations, yes, applications, no. And I want to be clear that in no way do we know about all the conversations that happen between staff and property owners. Conversations happen all the time, and we don't hear about them unless we need to, unless there's an action that we need to take. So just to make that clear, okay, I think Greg Lowell, I think you had a comment, and then I want to move on to that slide.
One that's been on the screen, I didn't pick up on, so maybe
I want to make, I do want to make sure we get to those ideas, so I think we're gonna end the comments tonight with Greg.
If I can have a little latitude, I actually have two questions related. So this is the 2012 IGA. It's considerably more voluminous than this one. I note that the 2012 has multiple paragraphs and subparagraphs. This one doesn't. This one has all of these properties listed specifically. This one doesn't even list the three, the Apple Valley, the South St. Vrain, and the Eastern Corridor. So is the new IGA gonna look like the old IGA in terms of detail?
In terms of weight, probably not, I think, and I'll want my colleagues in the county to talk about this too. What we were trying to do is simplify it. And, that 2012 IGA is a little bit more complex than this one. So what we were hoping is that by simplifying the IGA would make it easier for everybody, but I want to defer to the county folks over there.
No, that's exactly it. It's a simpler version. It's a simpler way of saying a lot of the same things. You'll notice there's not all the whereas clauses and clauses and things like that our attorneys felt those are unnecessary to make it less accessible for the public. To give the document and understand it and read it. So if you don't live it every day, so it's just a chance to make it more accessible to viewers.
No, we're not paying the lawyers by the word.
Yeah, so no, I understand that, and trust me, this isn't a gotcha. But in the 2012, in paragraph 3.1.1, it says that the town agrees that it will only annex parcels in their entirety, not portions of a parcel. So, like the Boone property, do we annex all 56.71 acres instead of just the 4.83 down here?
Well, if they go through the annexation process in the county and they subdivide, I'm sorry, if they go through the subdivision process in the county.
But that's not what he said last week. You said you didn't have to go through a subdivision with the county in order to parse out 4.83 acres.
You could avoid it by doing an illegal subdivision and apply to the town, yes, with that smaller portion. I think that language is something that should be up for discussion. So
they can come to the town with their 4.83 acres, right? And there's nothing the county can do about it, except after the fact, you're going to then ask them to put all the rest of it into protection.
The rest of it would not be, it would not be developable.
Okay, yeah, you got it, but you'll put it into a conservation easement. Okay, so here's my second question. All of these parcels that appear in the new IGA, how did they get there? Because Trustee Edding just said the two pieces of property changed hands, and they were inquiring about annexation. But did Lucanen come to you? Did Hawkins come to you? Did these three folks come to you or to the staff?
Not as far as I know. I know when we first started the process of collaborating with the county about the IGA, we talked about what our goals were and talked about how to meet those goals. These particular parcels seemed to, and I'm speaking for myself, but I would love it if anybody else wanted to add anything, seemed to make the most sense based on what we knew the situations to be. We knew the Boones were interested in selling, for example. With the Harkless property, it just kind of makes sense because it's right there. And, it seems it's close to downtown and seems like a great place to put some apartments, So there's no grand master plan to,
Okay. Thank you, Holly, but it's almost like we're spitballing these properties. Not these two that you mentioned, Fred, but the other ones. It sounds like we're kind of spitballing them and saying, oh, sure.
well, I do believe, and, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, or somebody else said staff, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that staff sat down with lieutenants to talk about what they wanted and what their future plans might be. I did not, so I'm not gonna speak about it, but that's my understanding.
All right. I'm taking up too much time, but just one more thing.
Two things, Greg. Don't make me get the gavel.
So the Apple Valley and the South St. Vrain in the Eastern Corridor aren't mentioned in the new IGA. Shouldn't they be? Because they're still basically candidates for any annexation actions. They were in the old one. Shouldn't they be mentioned in the new one too?
I'm gonna leave that to staff and if county wants to comment on that.
Yeah, I'll say, I couldn't find that answer. I wasn't, unfortunately, these properties were on this map, but Victoria, I can get with Victoria, we just clarify.
Okay, I really want to make sure that we have at least, we only have 15 minutes left. And so could you put that slide up, Dolores? No, the document that I sent, yeah. So we got sent over some suggestions for moving forward earlier from the community, so we're gonna try to get those, hopefully that works. If not, I'll try to read them from my phone. Okay. So does somebody want to talk through these?
Yeah, Matt's gonna do that.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
Yeah, so we've been having some informal neighborhood community meetings, mostly represented by folks from North End, but from all around town. And we took Administrator Simonson's suggestion to heart that we should provide some suggestions. And it sounds like there may likely be an opportunity to do that in the future. But these are just, I believe we have 5 here, some suggestions that we had good agreement on when you're meeting. So I'm not speaking for myself. I'm talking for, let's say, about 50 people, and these were pretty unanimous suggestions. So we kind of wanted to have 4 things in mind as we were generating these suggestions, and they were fiscal responsibility. Let's not increase fire safety issues, such as adding wildfire fuel with high density, and let's not decrease egress safety. So we had all of these things in mind as we came up with them. The first one, as we kind of went around and talked about what would we like to see in the new IGA map, we just kept coming back to the 2012 map. Everyone really liked the 2012 map. So that seems like would be a good place to start from, with potentially pinpointed modifications based on the comment. So we really landed on that 2012 map. The second one is, as we talk more about it, a lot of these areas north of town, they're clearly not fiscally responsible places to develop. And that was noted in the 2017 LPPA master plan. In fact, there were no residential areas that would be fiscal benefit to the town. The only place in that master plan that was fiscally responsible and could provide a budget surplus for the town was the Eastern Corridor. That it did not say that residential development in the Eastern Corridor would be viable fiscally, but potentially that retail development in the Eastern Corridor could support residential development. So that seemed to be a focus in the 2012 map, and potentially a good place to focus affordable housing development. Another place where we thought for affordable housing goals we could help support those was by maintaining the push for ADUs. Those have been very successful, and both the county and the town have these affordable housing goals, So let's both put some skin in the game and incentivize these ADUs, with a property tax reduction. The county has to put some skin in the game, the town has to put some skin in the game, and that would be beneficial all the way around towards getting those affordable housing goals. Kind of along those same lines, in terms of let's both put skin in the game, utilizing, our neighbors in Longmont and Boulder that have existing affordable housing and do things like Alliance Flyer to Longmont, expanding that public transportation network so that we can bring in workforce for the affordable housing that we might not be able to build up. Yep.
Yeah, and the point with that, you want to?
Yeah, go for it, Patrick.
Is that, planner, Andrew?
I moved around.
Was mentioning Jackson Hole and Steamboat, and we have Longmont 10 minutes away. And they have, I think, 3,000 affordable housing units, and I think they're planning on about 2,000 more currently. So that's a huge resource. And not only for that, but we could also facilitate bringing people into Lions to patronize our businesses as well. And it's interesting that hasn't been brought up before. We've got the one to Boulder, but it really seems like a closer community that can support us would be Longmont. So to that end.
And just so you know, I have actually talked to the mayor of Longmont about that at work. I would love to see that. I would love to see a bus to Longmont. Oh my gosh, call RTD.
Right.
Yeah.
And then finally, aim for mixed-use commercial residential development downtown. I think that's maybe an obvious one, but that's a prime area that we could focus on. So I'll leave it at that. I don't know if other people have suggestions or.
Matt, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And you know, and this is first of all, so deeply appreciate the work that everybody is putting into this and has put into this and is likely going to put into this. To make this better for the whole community. So I just want to say that, and this is a really great starting point and very much appreciated and grateful for you taking that to heart. I see Dan back there who hasn't yet had a chance to speak. Why don't you go ahead?
I've lived in Lions for more than 15, less than 20 years. I don't like the 5-acre rule, because to me it represents a shift in the town when we lost a boatload of residents to the flood, and the vote basically said, you're not coming back. That's my emotional piece of the 5-acre rule. I want to acknowledge you guys and the ridiculous amount of work you do, basically volunteer. Greg, to your point, you get up there and you're on record, you're going to take all the shots, right? But I greatly appreciate what you guys do. It's not easy. Fire mitigation, I would leave to the experts. So fire mitigation aside from me, I moved to Lions because it's small. The fishing used to be good. Mountain biking is good. I love it. And I looked around and it's basically a bowl. And I'm like, this place is going to grow, but it can't grow very much. And if it grows 300 something housing units like the gentleman referenced to me, well, our businesses die on Main Street all the time. Watch the signs change, right? We don't have the people here to support them. We're not going to bus people in Longmont effectively to do that. There are buses now, right? I welcome people. Nobody else got interrupted. I don't support that. I think common sense, smart growth with fire mitigation, with all the appropriate things in place. As a Lions resident, I'm cool with proceeding with that process and the slogan you guys described. Thanks for doing the work.
Yeah. Thank you. And so one thing I want to consider, you know, when we talk about affordable housing, oftentimes we think about rentals, but just to put out there that there are other possibilities. There's deed restricted units so that people can put down roots and build generational wealth for their families, just like we've been able to do.
Today, tried to move here. You wouldn't be able to afford your properties today if you tried to move here.
Would you introduce yourself? This is not fair. if you're gonna be a representative of Lee Connor who's on the call, please stand up and introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name's Danny and I am, friends with Lee Connor.
You're a
And,
representative of Lee Connor.
well, I'm technically have zero representation and we have nothing.
You're not a realtor?
Yeah, we don't have any agreement, so we have nothing signed. I've just been doing pro bono work for her to try to figure out, and it just so happened that, back in 2 years ago, she just happened to reach out to me to ask us about, you know, the potential annexation of her property. At that time, it just so happened that the IGA was being renegotiated. So 100%, it was all serendipitous, 100%. And that I can promise you, I have no agreements with her in place right now whatsoever. I am a single mom. I would love to afford to buy a house in Lyons. It would be awesome. And the idea behind attainable housing, where people are making 80 to 100% of the AMI, would be able to come in here and actually afford to own a home. That really excites me, it excites my friends, and it excites people who can't afford to buy homes in Boulder County at all. So I'm just trying to say that we continue to see, I am a realtor and I continue to see the cost of homes go up so drastically, and there isn't enough properties for people to purchase after the flood and the fires and everything that we dealt with, and even in Louisville, it's becoming a real issue, and it's really difficult to imagine the trajectory of the housing prices going up. If we don't have a more workforce housing available, and we don't have these types of plans in place, the prices of homes are just gonna get out of control, and no one's gonna be able to afford to buy them. So I do like the idea of trying to, and I agree with the gentleman in the back, I don't wanna see crazy, nobody wants to see this town go out of control and not have like responsible measures being taken. But it would be nice for some younger folks and some teachers that live and work in this community, city council members who are driving in, and people in general who just can't, who unfortunately didn't buy back in 1993 or even in 2001, to be able to afford to purchase here. And this attainable housing is great. They built up that Summit House back there. There's a lot of those are affordable. People are making too much money to live in those ones. So we need more attainable housing, more middle ground, median priced homes for people that have families, for starter families, for people that want to live and work in Lyons and love the sun just as much as all of you do. And so it would be my goal ultimately to make sure that if this does go through, because ultimately at the end of the day, we don't know if this is even possible. It could be way too expensive and a developer is not going to dip their feet into anything that's too expensive to do. So at the end of the day, we would just like to see maybe a possibility to say, hey, if we could get this step one done, maybe we can see how much it's going to cost, and then we can maybe put together a plan that would actually make the town's character stay the same and not grow it to a point where it would be so dense and so out of control that it would lose its character and its beauty and what we all love about Lyons. I love this town, and I just want to say I hear all of you as well, just like the board members. So thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna end with Nick. And then after Nick makes his remarks, we're gonna I'll talk a little bit about what I see as next steps. You know, just, we all have a lot to think about. We all heard a lot. So, after that, then we're gonna show the film. So if you would like to stay for that and take a look at that film, that's great. If you've already seen it, you're ready to get home and open that bottle of wine, maybe, then go and do that. Nick, would you like the microphone?
To address the gentleman in regard to the affordable housing project that was defeated, that had nothing to do with the 5-acre rule. That had to do with the vested parkland, and it went to a vote of the people and was defeated. That's not the only thing that was ever defeated in regard to the vested parkland. We lost the possibility of a new elementary school attached to a recreation center. So open space in this community is valued very, very highly. And the other thing is, in regard to the 5-acre rule, the people by right of the state constitution can override any legislative action of the Board of Trustees. And we can also write legislation, and we can move that 5 acre rule to read any annexation. I'm not ready.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. Okay, so in terms of what I see as next steps here, I know Clerk Vasquez has been back there diligently taking notes for us, which I so appreciate. Thank you very much. Let's give her a hand. I don't know if you all know, but we actually have the very best town clerk in the entire state. She's going to so at our next meeting, which is March 18th, as I said, there's going to be a discussion direction item on the agenda. The agendas are published on late Thursday afternoon, generally around 4 o'clock for the following Monday meeting. And so you can look on the town website. You can always see the agenda, download the packet, read it. I'm not going to speak for the other trustees, but I have not heard anybody say, no, we don't want to slow this down. No, we don't want to create a working group. And I'm going to let whoever wants to speak in a second do just that. So before I do that, I want to thank you all so much for being here, for taking the time, for becoming so involved. Somebody said to me today that, over COVID, we lost a lot of community involvement because who the heck wanted to be on a Zoom call after being at Zoom work for 8 hours or Zoom school? Like nobody wanted to do that. It was really, really hard. And it's really a shame that we lost so much community involvement, but totally understandable. And one thing that personally makes me feel good is, oh, it was Mark who said that. We'll give him the credit. So one thing that makes me personally feel so good is seeing so many people get so involved again. I hope that, we are going to have at least one vacancy on the planning commission. If anybody is interested in talking about applying to that, boards and commissions are another great way to get involved. So we'll be talking about this at our meeting on Monday. That is our next step. We'll be thinking a lot about this, and I want to see if any other trustees want to say anything before I lose the voice entirely.
As to the question of whether or not we as a board, or I, as a member of the Board of Trustees, I'm Paula Williams, would ever endorse the concept that, hey, let's try to get this under 5 acres. We live in this town just like you do. I've done lots of different jobs over the last 72 years, and I can tell you, this is the most thankless job I have ever done. But it's an important job. And what's important is that we arrive here with integrity. And we remain with integrity. And there's no way on earth. If somebody came in, my thought with that would be, oh, geez, really? I mean, you're just, because there will be people out there thinking that we wanted it this way. No, that's not something that I ever in my life would do. And I think that's true of most of us here in this room. We are you. Remember that. We're you too. We just offered to serve for a few years to try to keep this town as healthy as it possibly can be. So I really appreciate the way this board has approached all of this, and I am fully supportive of slowing this down because we have heard you and we have heard you well, and getting input from all of you in that process.
We hear you and we appreciate you. We thank you for being here tonight. And if you feel as passionately as I do about housing and human services, we have 2 vacancies on that commission. They meet once a week, the second Monday of the month. Once a month. Second Monday of the month. You're in the library right before this meeting.
I'm pissed.
Just one last comment. Number 2 on the slides from the people on Steamboat Valley Road, that is, let's look at the Eastern Corridor. I could run over and give you a hug right now. We have had so many people, in 2015, we did an LPPA. We had this lady that made a great comment. She's like, development is a lot like electricity. It follows the path of least resistance. The Eastern Corridor is the way to go. That's what she said. don't waste your time on the western part of Lyons. But this time around, when we plan out the eastern corridor, the people that are in charge, it's not gonna be me. No more of this, but take the land that has the lowest development cost and leave that for the affordable housing. Because what we've kind of done here is we've taken the bits of land that are the dregs, they're the last, they have the highest development cost. And now we're saying, oh, let's put affordable housing there. Take the land that has the least development costs and say, this is where affordable housing will go. If we done anything, I hope that's what we can all take away. Thanks.
Okay, so, yeah.
So I would say, I think this is great. This is the most involvement I feel like we've had in almost the entire 2 years. And I think that I'm in agreement we need to slow it down, we need more input. Maybe we were thinking about it wrong. So, but I think the input is great and it needs to keep. So get more involved.
Thank you, everybody. Did you?
You want an introduction to the video? It's a 4-minute video.
Yeah, I don't know if we have it queued up yet. Can we take just a 60-second break and then who's gonna do the intro?
Well, let's make sure we don't lose the whole room with the break.
Yeah.
Has a very.
I think we're about ready. Would you like to do the introduction? So can we?
Lyons has a higher wildfire risk.
Hang on one second while we get the technology.
Lyons has a higher wildfire risk than Paradise. Lyons.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to that. Okay, who's gonna do the introduction? You are? Do you want a microphone? I mean, it has my germs on it. Could you talk a little bit about why you made the video, a little bit of the background? And I'll say the reason that we're watching the video tonight is because at the last meeting, you requested that we show it, we weren't able to for time. And so I promised that we would watch it tonight. We still have the fire district here.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So this is a 4-minute video. Basically dealing with, it's one topic, 4 minutes on one topic, and it's wildfire risk, mainly in all of the area and especially in the northern area. But I do want to have one slight clarification with what Mimi was suggesting at the very beginning of the session. I just wanted to clarify that as far as the wildfire risk percentages that are stated in this video, they're taken from the U.S. Forest Service website. It's called Fire Sciences Laboratory. And you can just plug in any community and it gives you a wildfire hazard risk percentage. So I just wanted to clarify where that came from. And then also that NIST actually in here is talking more about indefensible space due to high density. And that high density housing is the worst kind of construction that you can have in a high wildfire risk. So this is by no means wants to negate any of the other major issues. Are we ready? We're getting there. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Maybe it's bottom left before.
I think you need to get like right here. I think it's on the, I don't know.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, there you go.
East in the United States. Lyons has a higher wildfire risk than Lahaina, Hawaii. Lyons has a higher wildfire risk than Paradise, California.
Lyons has a higher wildfire risk than Santa Rosa, California. Lyons has a higher wildfire risk than Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Lyons has a higher wildfire risk than Superior, Colorado. And in most cases, it's not even close. Considering wildfire risk in the Lyons planning area, the LPA, how does Steamboat Valley rank? It's as bad as it gets. What is the worst development configuration possible in high wildfire risk areas? According to NIST, high-density communities are the worst possible development configuration for wildfire risk. NIST states, in high-density construction, one ignition will result in structure-to-structure fire spread and the destruction of the entire community. It is very difficult to reduce or remove the fire exposures in high-density communities. In summary, for high-density communities, the risk of entire community loss is very high. Are there any places in or around Lyons that have a lower wildfire risk? Yes. Areas farther east, such as the Eastern Corridor. This graph uses NOAA data to show Lyons area relative humidity from 2014 to 2022. The red dots indicate high wind days with low RH. 20% RH indicated by the red line is typically the threshold for red flag or high fire danger days. It has become significantly drier over this relatively short 8-year time interval. If we continue at this rate, red flag days will become an average day in Lyons before the intergovernmental agreement, the IGA, renews again. How would high-density development in Steamboat Valley impact safe evacuation in case of wildfire? Safe evacuation is already seriously hindered by a single evacuation route with a pinch point constriction along Fifth Avenue. If the current configuration of single-family homes and the businesses at 1040 Fifth Avenue were forced to evacuate, this graph highlights the bottleneck that would ensue. The next graph highlights what would happen even at the lower end of the proposed development in the area with 50 units on Connor's property, 30 units on Boone's property, plus 15 units on the Carpenter property. Ready? Fire. Aim. This board and town staff worked very hard to complete the Lyons Thrive Comprehensive Plan. Please remember Goal G5. Ensure accountable and transparent governance that builds community trust. For all practical purposes, there's been no planning for this North LPA area. The only vision for the area's future has been established by out-of-town developers who do not call Lyons home. The current amended intergovernmental agreement does not expire until November 15, 2024. We are asking the Lyons Town Board trustees to take the time to engage their citizens in the process and carefully weigh the impacts. This is far too momentous a decision to rush.
And I don't, we're obviously over time, so I'm not gonna ask the fire district if they would like to respond, although, if you would, obviously, I'm not gonna say no.
No, and not at this time, until we update that plan. And we are using our current information and we are localizing it as opposed to a generality, as was indicated by one young lady that, this came from this and you can take this and apply it to any community. There's a lot more parameters that come into play when you're doing that. So I would say to you is let us get this plan updated. The one thing that you should also know is that part of this plan will be to do property assessments on every piece of property in the community. And if we happen to look at property like that, that'll be included as well. So I implore you, before you make decisions based on the generalities, if you give us an opportunity to get that plan done, and then we can comment with specifics and knowledge that is right now in this, at this time period. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
For the IGA.
No, I tell you that the plan, the plan takes a little while to get done. And when you're looking at assessing somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,600 properties in our community, that takes a little time as well. So, but I mean, that's the best way to address and to look at the big picture. So I'm not sure where you are in your timing process, but I've told you what our timing is, and that's where we are.
And thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I think what we're gonna need to do is take into account all of these factors when we decide how to move forward. So, okay, all right. So it's 8:15. Let's call it a night. I thank you again so much for coming and for sharing your thoughts and your ideas and your questions. And there's certainly gonna be more to come. And I imagine that we'll see a lot of you on March 18th. Yeah.